Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our last scheduled webinar for the 2020-2021 school year. We are so thankful that you joined us. As usual, we are recording. We have several people who asked that we would send them the recording. And so just wanted to let you know that that was happening. We're so excited to share with you this webinar entitled R&R, Revitalize and Rejuvenate Your Framework and Yourself. I am Alicia Zeman. I am the PBIS coordinator, and I am so excited. The whole team, minus Tiffany Hendershot, who's on military duty right now, is gathered today to bring this to you. And so we will hear from each of them, and we're going to go in the order that you see on your screen. Jen Fletcher is our Mountain Behavior Support Specialist. Terrell Jones is our Southern Behavior Support Specialist. Aaron Day is our Northern Behavior Support Specialist, and Christy Fubio is our Aware Behavior Support Specialist. And I actually think Christy comes before Aaron, but I just wanted to give you a heads up of who you're going to see during this webinar. I am in control of the slides, so you will hear them say, Lisha, can you turn the slide, next slide? It's just easier than switching between all of us. As usual, we have to do our slides telling you who we are. We are from the West Virginia Behavior Mental Health Technical Assistance Center. We are a collaboration between the West Virginia Autism Training Center at Marshall University and the West Virginia Department of Education's Office of Special Education. We are the hub of three major projects in the state of West Virginia, including the West Virginia Early Childhood PBIS project, which is headed up by Dr. Amy Carlson. We are the school-wide PBIS project, and we have the Mental Health First Aid project, which is headed up by Diana Bailey Miller. That slide is a repeat. So this is just it's actually a postcard that some of you might be able to see, and we will be handing it out in trainings. But what this does is it's going to allow you to know that we would love for you to follow us on Facebook. That's where we update of any trainings we're going to have, or any news from the Behavior Mental Health Technical Assistance Center. This is a QR code for the tiered fidelity inventory. We did extend that deadline. If you've not turned in your TFI for this year, you can still do that, and it will go. It will come to me and our program evaluator, Anna Shreve. And this is the QR code to share your implementation stories. So we're looking for some of those anecdotal stories or notes that you could share with us to tell us about how PBIS has impacted your schools. This would be the back of the postcard that we hope to see you in person and share with you. This shows the map of our state and the breakdown of our regions. You can see the different colors represent the different regions of our school-wide PBIS Behavior Support Specialist. And the triangles represent our Early Childhood Behavior Support Specialist. So the blue triangles is Sarah Smouse, and she serves the north. And the red is for Jess George, who serves the southern part of the state. If you would like to request any further assistance, you can always go to our website to do that. And if you need any more information or any links, you can contact me at holt64@marshall.edu. The mission of the West Virginia Behavior Mental Health Technical Assistance Center is to assist teachers, students, families, and communities that are faced with challenging behaviors and mental health issues through training, resources, and promotion of evidence-based strategies and interventions. We are the hub of PBIS, but we provide trainings in childhood trauma and trauma-informed classrooms, challenging behaviors and classroom procedures, functions of behavior and data analysis, family engagement, self-care for educators, and honestly, we can most often develop a training to fit your needs. If it's in the behavior mental health world and we can find information and really have a discussion about what changes you want to make, why do you want to make them, and how do we make that happen, we can usually help develop a training to help you out. So what can you expect from us today? Like I said, we've assembled the Avengers today. All the behavior support specialists are here, and they're going to share with you ways to decompress from the school year and refresh your mindset, We're going to provide ideas for refreshing your PBIS framework as you think ahead. And we're going to discuss how to reflect on our previous practices and reconnect with ourselves and our students. And with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Miss Jen Everhart Fletcher, and she's going to share with us the beginning of this webinar.
Get used to that, Alicia.
I know, I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, it's okay. Yeah, thank you guys for being here today. Today we really wanted to bring something lighthearted and nothing too heavy content-wise for you guys. We know it's been a crazy, crazy year. And I used to be in the classroom and now I'm not, and I work from home, thankfully. And I know how I can imagine being in your shoes this past year, honestly. I actually felt for the first time, like super glad that I wasn't in the classroom because I just really can't imagine everything that you went through. So first off, I'd like to say kudos to all of you because what you're going through is crazy. And just trying to handle all of that, I'm sure has been very stressful. So I just kind of want to take a look at some of the stressors that potentially you could have been experiencing this past year. And when I made this list, these were just a few things that came to mind. So I'd love for you guys to throw some things in the chat, anything that I haven't touched on. But, obviously, first off is COVID. This is why we're in the situation that we're in. And because of that, this year, you might have been had to deal with potential sick family members, sick friends. And then next is this unpredictable schedule, this bouncing all around back and forth. Are we in school? Are we out of school? That alone was probably very stressful for you guys. In-person learning versus virtual learning with that unpredictable schedule. You probably had no idea from day to day what to expect or where you were headed or what you were doing. And I know just from speaking with so many teacher friends that it was very, very, very challenging. Some of you might have your own kids at home while you're trying to work. And I know firsthand how stressful that can be. So I can't imagine trying to teach and take care of a child all at the same time at home. Creating lesson plans for both in-person and virtual, that had to be challenging for you guys. Teaching through a mask and all that comes along with that. Especially with those little ones, they thrive off of that smile and that personal connection that, that you make with them, and even the younger elementary, and not being able to just shoot them a smile and know and let them see, like, I got you, we're okay here, you're okay, you're safe. I know that probably had to be challenging. And managing behaviors virtually, my goodness, I know there were lots of stories about that I heard that were pretty interesting. So I know that was challenging, especially from a lot of you guys who are PBIS schools. You had the system in place and you tried to take that from in class, in school to now virtually. And I know that a lot of that went out the window. So this is kind of what we wanted to chat with you guys about today, as we talk about kind of the future of getting back on the horse of PBIS and transitioning back into school. And then lastly, just managing student attendance and participation, I know was super stressful as well. Students didn't show up, and if they were there, they may not have been present really with you. Some of that could have been from the parenting side. I mean, again, so many more things that stressed you guys out this year. Like I said, this is just a small list. If you want to throw a few things in the chat and add to that, we'd love to hear you out. That's why we're here today. We'd love to be kind of a listening ear, a bending ear. If you just want to vent through your chat and tell us what stressed you out, what maybe is still stressing you out, because we know you guys are going into summer school. And then things that are potentially you're feeling kind of stressed or anxious about for when you're coming back. So if you want to throw that in the chat and some of us will respond back and forth with you, that's cool. If not, you can email us and we can be a bending ear as well. All right, Alicia, next slide, please. All right, so I want everybody to take a huge, big breath. So in through the nose and out through the mouth. And just know that you got this. You made it. Most of you have a week of school left. You guys did awesome. You got this. We are here to support you however we can. You just have to ask, and we will do our best to help you. Next slide, please. All right. So as we talk about revitalize and rejuvenate, we really need to think about what does that really mean? So I put our definitions in here. So the revitalized definition is to fill something with new life and vitality. So for me, when I think about the definition of that, it means breathing new life into what I know I love to do. When we are stressed out, it really does take away the fun. It takes away I think you just, you have to take a step back and remember why you love to do what you do, but stress can really impact that. Rejuvenation. So rejuvenate definition, to make someone or something look or feel younger, fresher, or more lively. So for me, when I think of that, I think about bringing back liveliness and energy and joy. So it's so important with our career and our teaching career is to, how can I figure out how to fall back in love with what I do with the stress that's involved? Because sometimes we can't remove that stress. We have to think about how we can still navigate the love of what we do, find joy in the midst of all the chaos. And a lot of that comes through our mindset. But we're going to talk a lot today about self-care as well, and just thinking about how we can navigate through that. Next slide, please. Okay, so why is it important to revitalize and rejuvenate? So frame of mind. We have to be thinking, am I in the right frame of mind to do what I do best? And stress is obviously going to impact that tremendously. But we have to remember that to be able to meet our students where they are, we have to be in our best frame of mind in order to assist them. So you have to think that it starts with us, how we respond to students. If we're stressed out and we're responding in a negative manner, then that's probably what we're going to give and pass down to them. So we need to take a step back this summer, especially after everything you guys have been through. We really today wanted you to know how important it is to step back and think about how I can get back into that right frame of mind to benefit those that I work with. It's also important because we're handling other people's stressors on top of dealing with our own. You're handling, if you're an administrator, you're handling your teachers and your students, potentially. Teachers, you're handling your other coworkers who want to vent. You're handling your students' stress. And that's a lot to deal with. So that's why it's important that we're in the right frame of mind first, so that we can then help others as well. We talked about being responsive in a positive manner. So being able to respond positively to those around us, especially our students and coworkers. We need to revitalize ourselves, rejuvenate ourselves, so that when we show up to work, whether it be virtually or in the classroom, that we can give our best because we have been able to fill that bucket. And lastly, that's the last thing I wanted to ask you was, is your bucket full so that you can help fill others? So today we are hoping that you can find strategies to fill your bucket, get it full again, and fall back in love with what you do amidst all the craziness that has happened. Next slide, please. So just a few helpful strategies before I turn it over to Terrell. I actually reached out to some of my sisters, and I just kind of asked them, like, if I was talking to you about revitalizing and rejuvenating yourself, like, what does that mean to you? Because I think those terms sound great, but we have to know and understand, what does it mean to do that? And like, how can I do that? So these are actually some of the things that they said. So find things that make you happy personally, and go and do that. Find ways to relax your worries. So yes, you can relax. Maybe it's sitting on the couch and mindlessly watching TV. But if we're so worried about something, then we're not truly relaxing that. So we have to think about breaking down into kind of categories of our stress and what is worrying us, and try to relax that specific worry. For me, my biggest worry right now is I have a 5-month-old, and I'm not vaccinated, and for personal reasons. And so for me, my worry that I truly struggle to relax that is knowing that when I do go out and about, COVID and my 5-month-old, I care more about her than me. So for me, that's my personal worry, if we're going to get vulnerable for just a second. And you have to figure out what is yours. Maybe it's journaling, writing it down, and figuring out how can you, kind of pocket that and think about how I can, today I'm going to focus on this worry, and I'm going to figure out, okay, how can I get through the day knowing I'm worried about this, but what can I do to help with that? I know for me, that helps with reducing stress on a day-to-day basis. Next is what frees up your brain. We constantly are stressing about stuff and worrying about stuff. It's in our nature. It's part of our makeup. And some more than others worry about things. But what frees up your brain? Like, what can you go and do that takes your brain off of everything? Is it a hike? Is it a swim? Is it a run, workout, go have a drink with somebody? I mean, what is it that's going to get your mind off of whatever is stressing you out? Especially thinking about getting your mind off of how crazy your year was so that you can move forward. What's going to do that for you? And along with that, taking your mind to a different place. So surrounding yourself around people who can do that, I think, is huge as well. Surrounding yourself around people who want to kind of stay stuck in this stressful stage and talk about all of the crud that is going on in life. Sometimes, I know for me, that's not helpful. You gotta be around people who are going to take your mind to a different place. And lastly, indulge in self-care. All of these are strategies of self-care because you are focusing on yourself. And Terrell is amazing at talking about self-care. So this is where I'm going to turn it over to her. She has some great things in store for you guys. And I appreciate you letting me share a few things with you. And I wish you nothing but the best this summer and for your future. And if you're in the mountain region, look me up, please. All right, Terrell.
Hey, thank you, Jen. I love, Jen, how you were talking about Revitalize. And in the beginning, you were talking about everything that our educators, teachers, social workers, school psychologists, administrators, what everybody's going through. And I love it also that you mentioned the buckets, and to think about, do like a self-assessment, is your bucket full? Is it full where you feel like you've got the energy? Is it half empty, or are you on empty? And a lot of times when I go out to schools and talk about self-care, especially now, we've got a lot of educators out there that are just trying to wing it until summer comes, just to give themselves that break. So I'm going to be going over with some specifics on rest, the benefits of rest. And are we getting enough? And if we're not, then how can we implement more rest into our lives? Alicia? Okay, so when you hear the word rest, and you can put in the chat box, but I'm going to give you some examples because as I presented this to several schools, I'm going to tell you what they're getting back, what they're feeding back to me. And that way you'll know that you are not alone, that there are others around you that are struggling with the same struggles that you are. And that's so important. But when you hear the word rest, what are the first few things that are likely to cross your mind? And so when I spoke with other schools just recently, actually last Thursday, they shouted out, a lot of them taking a break, meditation. One girl said, take a bath. And I'm like, hi, sister, I'm right there with you. These are important, but 9 times out of 10, 80% of the room, they shout back to me, sleep. Alicia. Yes, sleep it is. And so basically, I love the picture. How many of us wake up with our animals on top of us? It is sleep, but rest is more than sleep, Alicia. Alrighty, so according to the CDC, the average adult between the ages of 18 and 60 should be getting at least 7 hours per day of sleep. So when I talk with the teachers, educators, when I present on self-care, even during COVID, I would ask them, alrighty, so on an average, how many hours are you getting to sleep per day? And the average is about 6 to 8, okay, which just surprised me. And we had some 4, but the average was 6 to 8. But yet they would also communicate back to me, but yet I am still exhausted. So that's telling me that it's not necessarily that they're having issues with sleep. More than likely, we are experiencing a rest deficit, just like we have some of our students with skills deficit. Well, we as adults, especially during all the stuff that Jen had just told us in the beginning, we might be experiencing a rest deficit. Alicia. So this is, and then one of the reasons why you could be experiencing this is because we are living in a culture that says rest is wrong. In fact, I've had some people actually admit to me and say, you know what, I feel guilty for taking a rest because I'm lazy. I just need to grind it out. I'll rest when I'm dead. And the famous one, rest is for the weak, coffee is for the strong, as we carry whatever caffeine we have in our hand down the hallway, just waiting for 2:30 or 3:30, whatever it is that you get to leave. So we live in that culture, but we need to shift our thinking about rest because it is so essential. It's such a big part of ourselves today and for the future when we come back, when we have summer school, when we come back in the fall. Alicia. And so now I'm going to basically give you a little bit of research, and I'm going to give you a resource that you could use over the summer months. You can pick up the book and you could read it yourself. But I love Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith because when you read her book, she's just a very person-to-person, easy reading, but her heart is in for her patients. So let me give you a little background on her. So Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, she on a regular basis was having patients come in to her office with chronic stress. And when I say the word chronic, it means stress after stress after stress with little to no relief. And so the first thing that she thought was, my patients aren't getting enough sleep. So she would just try to, work on them and getting sleeping pills, Alicia. But then she realized it wasn't that and one more time, Alicia. It wasn't that they weren't getting enough sleep. And that really struck hard on her. She realized that, okay, so I have patients coming in here with back pains, muscle aches, chronic stress, exhausted emotionally, exhausted physically, but it wasn't sleep. So Alicia, so what she did was she dove into the research. And she took years of research. And then with working with her patients, she realized that rest is beyond sleep. And this is the book that I encourage you all to buy whenever you can, or if you're like me, I love TED Talks. She's got a wonderful TED Talk that talks a little bit about her Sacred Rest book. It's called The Real Reason Why We Are Tired and What to Do About It. I love that, what to do about it. And so I love this, Alicia. So she goes on to talk about in this book that there are 7 types of rest. Now, I was like amazed. I'm like, 7 types of rest. I knew the physical rest, the mental rest, the emotional rest. The social rest is good because sometimes we just need to take those weekends, never leave out of our sweatpants or shorts. Don't put the makeup on, put the hair up in the bun, or, maybe not even just sit on the couch, just lay like broccoli, just rest. But we often feel guilty about that, but we need that social rest. Creative rest, we're going to talk a little bit about too. Sensory rest and spiritual rest. So for the sake of time, we're going to focus on mental rest because I'm getting from a lot of educators, I'm mentally exhausted. How can I make it to the end until summer? Or I've got summer school. How can I prepare myself from these 2 or 3 weeks that I have until summer school starts? Maybe even sooner than that for some of you. And then creative rest. Alicia. Alrighty, so mental rest. One of the signs that you get with mental rest, that you need it, is that whenever you find yourself with the most basic task, you're finding yourself having a difficult time concentrating. It's things that you do time and time again, but now you are having a difficult time just finishing the assignment. One of the best signs that your brain is telling your body it needs a mental rest, because your brain's there to protect you. When your brain is telling your body you need a mental rest, it's when you read the same page over and over again. You just stare at it in a book for 10 minutes. You want to flip it, but you can't because it's that same paragraph because you just can't concentrate. That's really good signs that you need a mental rest, Alicia. So some really important strategies that you can do. And these don't take long. Turn off the digital devices around you. Practice mindfulness-based exercise. That's that grounding. I know you do this probably with a lot of your students, but it really only takes 5 minutes. If you are not someone to sit down to do mindfulness for half an hour or do a yoga or meditation, grounding will take you like 5 to 10 minutes. After school, or if you're stressed out, you just go somewhere quiet. It could even be in your car before you turn that engine on to go home. You can say to yourself, all right, what are 5 things that I fear? There you go. Feel. Okay. What are 4 things that I hear? 3 things that you see, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. Very quick mindfulness. And then you can see yourself, feel yourself just starting to calm down, get more regulated. And the last one is basically just listening to music, listening to those sounds that just keep you at that mental rest. Sometimes on the car ride home, it could just be some type of music that comforts you rather than listening to the news. Sometimes the news can be negative, and we will talk about that, Alicia. But let's dive into turning off the digital. Alrighty, so what's one of the first things that most Americans do every morning? And I did some research onto this. Alrighty, so a lot of you, what's the first thing that most Americans do? All right, some people, when I do this presentation, they say, okay, brush their teeth. But really, to be honest with you, when you really think about it, Alicia, the majority of Americans reach for that cell phone, reach for that technology. It's almost as though we can't start the day without knowing what's going on. We have this thing about us, what's next, what's coming around the corner, which isn't bad, but sometimes we just need to take a rest in the morning and get up into our daily routine and not be addicted to our cell phones. Because what does the cell phone do? It tells you exactly what you missed. It tells you what you need to be doing. Sometimes in the morning, it would be not just to get up, have a cup of coffee, or even have what we call a gratitude journal, where at nighttime you write down 3 things that happened to you that was wonderful. And then in the morning you wake up, rather than grabbing your cell phone, you grab your gratitude journal and say, you know what? Yesterday wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, or as I thought it was, because 3 things great happened to me. I guess it wasn't that bad. What you're doing is you're rewiring your brain to say, it was not that bad yesterday. I had some good things happen to me. Then you can reach for the cell phone if you have to, but just give yourself that break, Alicia. Alrighty, so here's some of the things that we can do to detox ourselves from technology. And I'm telling you, when I do the self-care presentation, I have done this many times on detoxing from technology. It is challenging. I've actually had teachers, when I go back to the school, tell me I tried to do it and it is more challenging than what I thought. I am more cling on to my cell phone, to my Facebook, to my computer than I even imagined, to the television set than I've ever imagined. Think about it. Research shows that the average adult spends 11 hours per day listening, reading, and interacting or watching social media. That's more than we are getting sleep. And we need to have that rest period. So 11 hours per day we're spending on social media or some type of technology. And when you think about it, when we watch the news or when we open up our cell phones and we, even on Facebook, I'll think about the mental images that are coming into our brains. Alrighty. So, okay, if you go home tonight and you turn the news on, I want you to make a mental note of this. You're going to see a lot of times murder. You're going to natural disasters, things about COVID. It's negative. And so our brain begins to think that the ratio of negativity versus positive, there's more negative in the world than there's positive, and our brain starts to believe it. And so that's why we have to be cautious. I'm not saying don't watch the news, but did you know that 3 minutes of negative news in the morning will significantly, and here's the key word, significantly. Anytime you have research and the word significant is in there, it means, okay, listen, I'm going to listen, because it means they have found a significant result that increases your chances of having a negative experience over the course of the day. Alrighty. And so if we can just maybe in the mornings, get our gratitude journal out, be cautious when we're watching the news, how much news we're bringing in, how much negativity that we're bringing in. In fact, one of the things that you can find also when you need a mental break is when you starting thinking negative, when you yourself started, in your emails, you go back and you're like, wow, that was negative, or nothing's positive in your life. I'm guilty of that. I got stressed out during COVID, and my husband actually brought it to my attention. And I consider myself a positive person, so I kind of took offended to that. But I realized he was right, that I had become more negative. And it wasn't because I'm a bad person or you're a bad person. It's just we're stressed. And we need to be cautious then of what images and what we're taking into, and what Jen said, the people that we're socializing with. And it's a good way when we detox from technology to reconnect with ourselves, reconnect with our loved ones. A great example of this is I often ask our people, how many times at dinner time, do you sit around the table and spend time just talking with your kids rather than having the TV on? So I challenge you over the summer break, or whenever you have that break between now and summer classes, to give yourself that 15 to 30 minute challenge of detoxing. One great way to do that, Alicia, next slide. One great way to do that is if you have a dog, and your dog wants to go for a walk when he comes home, or when you come home and she wants to go. Better accountability, because a lot of times if we can say, okay, I'll do it for the dog. It sounds sad, but a lot of times we do it for other people other than ourselves. So a great accountability is the dog. Creative rest, I love, and I'm going to talk a little bit faster. Creative rest, this was amazing. I never even knew it existed before I started doing some research into this. So what it is not, it's not crafts or the painting classes where you have drink wine with your friends. Although that's great, trust me, it's not that. Creative rest, it places no demands on your creativity. It allows yourself to appreciate the beauty around you. And if you see the picture, West Virginia is a beautiful, beautiful state. This is actually from a national park. It's just sitting back and watching the universe give you a gift of letting the sun set, watching the sunset. You need a creative rest when your creative juices are on empty. And educators and administrators, I'm telling you, you all are the most creative individuals that I have been in contact with, especially during COVID. I've witnessed a lot of creativity, but I'm hearing from a lot of you, my creative juices are gone. And so now we need to reset that. We need to get back. We need to get a rest so that we can rejuvenate ourselves, so that when we need it the most, so that we can be regulated, so that when we need it the most, when our kiddos come back to school, we're regulated so we can help them to be regulated. And also with our family, we have children, we love children. We need to be regulated so that we can keep our children regulated. How do we get creative rest? Read a book that you've been longing to read. Spend time in nature. Visit a museum, a national park. Alicia, let other people's creativity just fill you up, all right, when you need that. So spending time in nature real quick, the environmental psychology, nature is so important. It improves mood, reduces stress, and improves cognitive functions. Those of you like me who love nature, there's so much research out there to back this up. The Journal of Inflammation Research, have you ever heard of the word earthing? It's basically just putting your fingers and toes in soil. So those of you who are gardening and flowers, you know what you're doing? You are earthing. You're an earther. You didn't know it, but it's boosting your immune system. All right. It's improving your sleep, your circulation. Think about your children when they come in after spending all day outside. They sleep more soundly. In the Journal of Scientific Reports, just nature sounds alone can take somebody from a stress response of fight, flight, and freeze, can regulate them. And that's why a lot of educators are using nature sounds in their classrooms, especially in the morning. But sadly, Environmental Protection Agency says 93% of our time as adults is spent indoors. And that statistic was taken before COVID. So we need to get outside. The picture below is also a West Virginian. These are 3 girls taking a hike in West Virginia trails, and they are actually getting themselves back. They're getting that creative rest. Alicia. So my last slide, for those of you who want to see, take this over the summer break. Take the quiz, therestquiz.com. It's very easy. It'll tell you specific areas of rest that you need to get rejuvenated, that you need to just maybe pump up some rest in that. Don't do all 7. If you just pick the one, maybe pick 1 or 2 that you want to focus on, Alicia. And then when you come back to school, one more time, Alicia, then you will be ready. You'll be prepared. Gotcha, didn't I, Alicia? Just kidding. I love her. Anyway, so now I'm going to tip this on over to Christy, who is going to talk to you a little bit about preparing to come back to school.
All right. Thank you. So after you get all that rest this summer, another school year is going to start. So get the rest while you can, and know that the school days seem long, but the summer ones will be so short. So with that in mind, we want to have the goal of reconnecting with our students and bringing them back to basics. So we've heard the saying probably one too many times that we are all in the same boat. And I think we all felt this when the world kind of shut down in March 2020. But as COVID progressed, we realized that we have been and are in the same storm, but we are definitely not in the same boat. So COVID has created a sense of isolation in some and a sense of relief in others. It's been an introvert's dream and an extrovert's worst nightmare. I think two of my kids are a perfect example of this. My daughter was a senior last year and missed prom and the assemblies and missed being at school and seeing her classmates every day. But my son, who is a senior this year, kind of loved not dealing with the day in and day out high school stuff. So, and that's something that we're really going to have to think about when our students return in the fall. Where are they on the spectrum? What have they missed about the normal over the last year? What have they loved about being at home? When we return in the fall, what additional baggage are they bringing with them? When you think about the groups of students that you've had over the years, I'm sure you can see how it affects them individually and differently. How many students went home in March 2020 to stable, loving, and supportive homes versus the ones that went home to chaotic ones? So these are the same concerns like we typically have every summer as we say goodbye to our students. But we have to remember that when we come back in the fall, there's a good chance that some of our students have been away for almost 18 months. Alicia. So research by Hobble and colleagues has identified 5 interventions that support recovery following a disaster or a serious incident. And looking at COVID as the disruption that it has been, these 5 elements are definitely something we can utilize to reconnect with our students and bring them back to the basics of the school environment. So these 5 elements include promoting a sense of safety, a sense of calm, a sense of self and collective efficacy, a sense of connectedness, and a sense of hope. Alicia. So I know what you're thinking. Go ahead and click again. What does this all mean? Click again. And is this something extra? And the answer is no. These are all things you've probably been doing in your classroom. It's just that now we really have to take the time to make sure we're intentional and purposeful when we return in the fall. Okay, Alicia. So the first thing we want to do is establish safety. Go ahead. As the school year starts, it's important for the staff to be aware of, label, and acknowledge their own feelings. So most of you have been doing that when you returned to school, working in, on and off since the fall. But there's going to be a few teachers that were virtual last year. So it's necessary for the staff to come together to support one another this new school year. Go ahead. When the students return, you want to develop a clear structure to your school and classroom and set simply defined expectations. These may be part of what you have already established as your part of your school-wide PBIS. So it's time to think about how you will address these in your classroom. Go ahead. You want to involve and include your students to define these expectations. Like, what do they look like in the classroom, the hallway, the playground, cafeteria, other important school settings? Again, it may be already established, but it's important to involve your students, especially your new classroom of students, to start building that community. You can certainly help guide these conversations so that they mirror what already exists, but let your students tell you what they think these expectations look like. Review and teach the routine and expectations everywhere so that it becomes part of their everyday. Go ahead. And last, you want to watch your students with a little more curiosity and empathy as they adjust back to school. Because remember, behavior is communication. So keep an eye out for those teachable moments and opportunities to talk about emotions. Students are going to return with more anxiety, but may not have a way to communicate and acknowledge that anxiety. So they're going to need your help to feel safe and secure in the new environment. Go ahead. So next, we want to promote a sense of calm. Before school starts, you may want to provide a virtual tour for students to show them your classroom. You can show them what they'll do when they enter the building and your classroom that first day. Talk about the different safety precautions that are in place, what's changed, what stayed the same. This will help alleviate some anxiety for those students coming back to school, especially for those that are transitioning between schools or may have moved to a new area. You could also offer a virtual questioning and answering session. Just present some questions and answers that may be asked by students and parents upon returning to school. Fielding phone calls and meeting students at open house and talking to teachers from previous years may help you identify students who may require additional support. It takes time, but reaching out to the parents before school starts just to ask some basic questions will give you insight as to what those students will be bringing with them that first day. And then finally, have a plan. The rules are changing every day with COVID protocols, and it's hard to tell where we will be come August, but we need to be ready. How will you and other staff handle the inconsolable, anxiety-ridden child who can't seem to wrap their brain around why others are not following the rules the way they think they should? So what about the students that's upset because another student isn't wearing their mask correctly or at all? The student that calls out every student who's not following the hand washing guidelines. The student who just comes in every day crying and seems inconsolable. These are just a few things that we really need to think about for the fall. So work with your staff and come up with a plan. Do you have extra resources, such as counselors and social workers? Do you have a crisis team that can assist teachers in need during those first few weeks? Work out some of those unexpected happenings before school and decide what can and should be handled within the classroom versus what may require some more assistance. It's a lot to think about, and chances are whatever you are prepared for, it's not going to be what happens. So brainstorming about different scenarios with your staff will help. On that first day of school and every day, welcome each and every student. Take the time to greet them, use their name, show them they're happy that they're there and a part of the classroom. Throughout the day in your small groups, just do check-ins with your students to see how they are and acknowledge the feelings they may be working, to deal with and process. And finally, model emotional regulation and help your students by co-regulating emotions. Emotions are contagious. When teachers can model calm through their tone, facial expressions, and posture, students are less likely to react defensively. They'll listen. We have to listen to what the behavior is trying to communicate and focus on the students' feelings. Because when we do this, we tell them that we see them and we're trying to understand. So we can also offer calm down corners in space, use relaxation resources, and teach and use breathing exercises, as well as lead mindfulness activities or yoga. So if we're modeling regulation skills that we want to see from our students. Okay, next slide. So we want to create a sense of self-efficacy and collective efficacy. What do we mean by this? So we want the student to have confidence in their ability to complete a task and achieve a goal. And we want the class as a whole to have that same confidence in their ability to complete a task or goal. We can do this by using job charts to assign each student a designated task or job, helping students set academic as well as social goals, and have the class come up with goals. We want to create a sense of community, a kind of one for all for one mentality to encourage cooperation and support for each other. For our community to be successful and reach their goals, we also have to teach problem-solving skills. So we need to teach our students that problem solving is when you see a problem and understand what is causing it, and then you choose the best solution and solve it. So problem solving is a learned skill, and some of our students will need a lot more practice than others. Okay, next slide. We want to promote a sense of social connectedness. We do this by facilitating the connections between peers. We can pair students during small groups, provide opportunities where they can work with their classmates on projects and activities. We can use our circle time or morning meetings to foster those connections by showing our students how they are more alike than they are different. To promote connectedness within the school environment, we may ask specific adults to check in with some of our students, their teacher from last year, a favorite specials or planning teacher, the secretary, custodian, school counselor. And finally, we promote connectedness by modeling the behavior we want to see in our students. They're watching everything we're doing, so we want to be sure to model our responses to our students and other staff members appropriately, and use common language like our school, our project, or our activity to build that sense of community and belonging. Okay, next slide. So finally, we want to promote hope. Go ahead. So hope is a practice. It's not a personality trait. It's just something we do. It's rooted in our ability to create and sustain resiliency. Go ahead. So we do this by providing protective factors such as caring relationships, high expectations and academic standards, and opportunities for participation and contribution. This nicely ties in everything we've been talking about through our daily contact with our students. We help shape their beliefs in themselves and help them develop and strengthen those protective factors which promote resiliency. The easiest way, go ahead, for us to help continue fostering and building resilience is to be aware of the importance of the relationship and the connections we have as staff members with each student. Okay. So where do we go from here? Go ahead and click that a few times. Same thing. So you see that, we're all at the end of the year teacher tired. And if you remember nothing else, then just remember that it's all about the relationships. So make reconnecting with your students about building the relationship, bringing them back to school basics, by building the relationship. If you take the time to build the relationship, then you will make the transition back to school an easier and happier one for everyone. So next is Erin is up, and she's going to talk about preparing to come back and getting things in order.
Thanks, Christy. I'm excited to wrap this up for you guys and really kind of feed into what Jen and Terrell and then Christy were saying and how we can put all of this within our practices and then really look at our PBIS framework to refresh it and rejuvenate that as we move into next year. One thing we know is that we do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience. And I know as educators, that's something that comes pretty naturally to you. And it's something you do daily as you're reflecting on your practices within the day of how your lessons went, how your relationships with your kids are progressing. But I know that reflecting on this past year is going to be really important as you move into next year and plan for the things that you want to keep in place and the things that you need to change. Okay, Alicia? Because here are some things that we know from the past year. We know that this year has been filled with a lot of things that are very negative. It's been filled with uncertainty and doubt and stress, unprecedented challenges, a lot of anxiety and worry, especially when you were going back and forth between your hybrid model or being in school or being fully remote. That this year has been unlike any other, and it's been filled with a lot of these negative feelings that are tied to the past year. Alicia? But we also know that it's been filled with a lot of positive things too, because we know that every cloud has a silver lining. And if we're going to take anything from our experiences from the last year, we really want to encourage you to focus on those silver linings and the things that you can take away from them to put into practices next year to help to strengthen what you're already doing. We've seen our schools rising to the challenge that no one ever predicted what they would be facing. We've seen all of our teachers making such a big difference during a time that it was hard to do so. And we've seen some unexpected outcomes for our students. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. And it's a conversation that we've had with many of our schools and with each other. So Alicia, if you'll go to the next slide, I'll dig into those a little bit. for a long time this year, we were hearing that, nobody was having the discipline problems that they were having. They weren't seeing the negative behaviors that we were used to seeing. And we contributed definitely that to the fact that not all of the students were in the building. But we also started to see a trend that these things were happening because schools were doing really great things. We know that this year there's some things you've had to do because it was needed. It was needed for safety. It was needed to follow protocols and regulations that were in place because of COVID. And it was needed to drive the success of your students because you had to figure out how to do things in a different way. So you've had to have things like clear expectations for your kids. You've had to have that regular reinforcement, which we know closes the loop for them in the way that they don't have to predict, they don't have to guess what's happening for them. You've set up expectations. You're giving them reinforcement when they're following those expectations. What they need to do academically and behaviorally is very clear to them, and there's no guesswork in what's expected of them. We know you've had to do things like have really clear and precise routines and procedures of how to walk in the hallway, how to interact in the lunchroom, how to sit in the classroom. You've had to have really purposeful instruction because sometimes you were in the building and sometimes you weren't, and that you've had to look at data and examine that in a way that maybe you weren't used to doing. As I mentioned, we heard a lot that schools weren't seeing the behavior data they were used to seeing, but we know that there was data available in a lot of other areas. Schools were looking at attendance. They were looking at who was able to be online and who wasn't. And they were using all of this information to help drive the decisions they were making to impact their kids. Alicia? So we know that all of this has led to some really big ideas that are changing education for our state. There's been a really big focus on mental health and social emotional learning. Those are things that have always been around, but they've really come to the forefront in the last year. It's really brought us insight into our students and our families' needs. And we've seen a really big shift in family engagement and what that looks like this year and what that really truly means for a student in the school. We've seen an increase in positive behaviors because of the things I just talked about. And we've seen a really strong fidelity to people's behavior frameworks like PBIS, because again, that came from need and those strengths were really shining this year. Alicia? And that made me think of a webinar we did earlier this year when we knew that schools were going back to in-person instruction. We put together a quick webinar video and this one pager of our suggestions for a successful transition back to school. And we knew this was important during COVID because of the lessons that we had learned, but I know it's going to be really important for you as you're looking to transitioning back into next year, into a year that we are very hopeful looks more like normal for you and your students. I want you to take these tips and these suggestions to heart as you look into planning for next year too. We know that it's all about relationships, which Christy did a great job of explaining. We know that the engagement in our classroom leads to both academic and behavior outcomes that we're looking for. We know that solid expectations and routines create consistency and predictability for our kids. We know that offering them regular reinforcement on what they're doing well makes those behaviors more likely to occur. And we know that being consistent is really key for the success of our kids. Alicia? So that brings me to some things I'd like for you to consider as you wrap up the school year and look into the fall. Excuse me. Something I wish I would have put in here, and I didn't think of it until I was listening to everyone talk. We have an informal checklist for PBIS fidelity that we would love to share with you if it's something you're interested in. And what this is an overview of the PBIS framework and all the components that go into it for you to just take a look and see where your program or your framework is, to see what you've got going on that's really strong and what could use some attention. So if that's something you think your team would really benefit from doing, I'm encouraging you to reach out to your behavior support specialist to get in touch with them to get that sent to you. But that's what I'm thinking of when I think of that end of year PBIS reflection. Alicia mentioned the TFI. A lot of our schools have turned that in. So it's that time to really sit down and look at what you've got in place. Look at what went well this year, pull out those silver linings. Maybe you had some really strong expectations because you realized those needed strengthened. And we're going to tell you to take that into next year with you because that's something you saw great success with. And that will lead you into pre-planning for the fall and looking at your framework and what's happening and to see, where you need to put more attention, what you can take with you that was really successful this year. There's also some really great resources that we're offering from our center this summer. We sent out an invitation to keynotes for key people. And in replacement of our traditional summer conference, we have 4 really wonderful and incredible keynote speakers that are going to record sessions that we can offer to our schools, along with a professional development packet that you can use at the beginning of the year, PD, PLCs, or however that would fit best into your schedule. So if you have not registered to receive that, please reach out to us because we'd love to get you get that information in your hands. We're also going to do some PBIS boosters for Tier 1 and Tier 2 for those schools that have been through those trainings but have either not been through in a few years, or maybe you're looking to refresh or revamp your program and get some new ideas. And then we always offer PBIS readiness in our Tier 1 Academy in the fall. So if you are not a PBIS school but are interested in becoming trained in that framework with us, we would love more than anything to have you join us for those. And you can always, as Alicia mentioned at the beginning, create a professional development plan with your behavior support specialist. And we will work with you to find out what your needs are and how we can help support you the best, Alicia, because all of us are here for you to help you in any way that we can to help support you, your staff, and your students, especially as you look into next year. Okay, Alicia.
Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute. Just a real quick look at the resources. I believe that these come from what Christy had to share with us today. And then we're just going to leave this right here for you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I think our behavior support specialist did an amazing job. And just like you guys have done throughout the year, we've learned and pivoted and have really enjoyed bringing you these webinars once a month. And we're so hopeful that you were able to take something from this. So if you have any questions, if you'd like any follow-up technical assistance, if you have anything that you need support, please pick an email and let us know, and we'll be here for you. We hope you have a wonderful summer. We can't wait to see you. We hope we see you at the PBIS boosters. We hope that we see you potentially in person. All you have to do is let us know, and we'll be happy to provide that support for you. So everybody have a great day. Thanks for joining us on a Monday, and hopefully we'll be talking to you soon.